What you're looking at right here is a pile of failure. If you couldn't tell by this giant mess, I'm trying to make one of those hipster telephone microphone things, and I was trying to do it the hard way, but that just did not work. So I did some more research. I found an easier way to do it, so let's try this again. Step 1, buy a cheap, overpriced used telephone off eBay. The next step is optional, but step 2 is to get in a bidding war with some guy and really overpay for an even cheaper telephone. Step 3 is to get rid of the old slimy cables on these. This is nasty. And all we need is the phone, so we can get rid of the base. We can do something with that later. So now you have the earpiece, or the foam part of the phone. I don't think I filmed that, but all I did was unscrew these screws. This one has screws, so if you're following along at home, try to find a telephone with screws on it, and not one like this that doesn't have screws. I assume I can break this apart somehow without actually breaking it, so we'll see if I can actually do that. I did it! And now from here, we need to use the speaker side of the phone, not the microphone. So this is the side you put to the ear. So all we're gonna do is snip these cables. And then we can get rid of the microphone piece. All right, same thing with this. We'll get rid of the microphone and keep the speaker. All right, so this next step is where I went wrong at first. I thought I'd be able to use just a regular connector and hook it up to this cable, but don't do that. Just get rid of that cable and ignore that idea and get yourself an XLR. And HOSA was kind enough to send me these two connectors, but it turns out I'll only need one, so thank you, HOSA. But this also happens to be a HOSA cable. I've had this thing since like middle school, I think, so I think I can retire it. So we're just gonna take a length of this cable and make sure it's long enough to go through the phone and go to this speaker here. So this is plenty fine. That'll give me some stick out outside of the phone, and we'll just give it the old snip. So now with this, we just need to strip at this end. So all we need are these two cables so we can cut the packing and the shielding. Ideally, you'd want to ground this to something, but I'm gonna take the chance. So if you're doing this at home, do it at your own risk. Don't blow up your equipment, and if you do, it's not my fault. Now it's just a matter of taking the cable and putting it through the hole that the other cable came out of. And now we just need to solder these like so, and we'll be in business. It's back together. Of course, I wasn't recording, so we'll put the screws back in. And now you have a telephone microphone. And now this next one will be the exact same thing. The only difference is I cut off a length of the cable because I don't have another one, and I just need to solder one of the connectors onto the end and we'll be good. So if you're like me and don't solder every day, it might turn out a little bit ugly. But for something like this, it's not a huge deal. A few blobs aren't gonna hurt anything. It might just add a little bit of resistance, but this is a lo-fi setup, so it doesn't matter. And really the only thing that does matter is you wanna make sure that none of these wires are shorted out. So basically what I mean by that is none of these wires are touching the other wires, or that none of your solder blobs are touching the other solder blobs. And to check that, I'll be using this HOSA cable tester. So I will take one lead and touch it to the red wire, and then take the other lead and touch it to the pin that the red wire is connected to. And that light and beep means that we have continuity and that it's connected. And now when I touch the other pins, nothing should light up, and if it does, it means you have a short in the cable. So I'm touching both of them. It's probably hard to see, but I'm getting nothing, which is what we want, and it lights up when we hit the red pin. So we're good. And now I'll do that with all the other ones. So here's the ground. Yep. Touch the other ones. There's nothing. So that's right. Now we'll go to the blue one and go to the blue pin. That's good. And we get nothing on the other ones. So we're good. And now that we know that this end is good, we'll close it on up. And just like the other one, we'll solder this up to the speaker. One thing I had to do with this phone that I didn't have to do with the other one is grind down these little tabs in order to close the phone back together. And if you couldn't tell, I'm recording this voiceover with the telephone, but once I close it up, I'll throw them on the kit and see how they sound. So first I'll try them as close mics, so I'll put them on the snare and on the kick, and of course we'll compare them to the regular close mics. Then after that I'll put them in front of the kit and use them as room mics, and I think they'll work a lot better as room mics than close mics, so let's find out. Well, I don't know what you were expecting, but they sound like phones. Because they're phones. So typically when you want a phone effect, you'll cut a bunch of the highs and a bunch of the lows, and maybe add some gain to get some fuzziness, but that's exactly how these respond. There's no highs, no lows, just a bunch of mids, and they're kind of fuzzy. And something like this, for me at least, is the kind of thing where, you know, you kind of just add it to whatever you're recording. So say I'm recording guitar with this little amp right here, I would mic it like I usually do, but then add the phone mic, whether it be, you know, in front of it, behind it, next to it, or wherever. And it might not sound good, but then you know next time to put it somewhere else. And even if it does sound good, but it's not the sound that you're looking for, you can add that to your mental toolbox so next time you need that sound, you know how to achieve it. So hopefully that made sense, but that's basically my philosophy with recording. If you have the chance to experiment with something, by all means do it, because you never know when you'll need to actually use that technique. So if you have any questions or suggestions, I would love to hear them, and as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Sharing the video also really helps, but that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.